You have been appointed as British Embassy to Somalia late January, and you have arrived in Somalia February. What is your achievement so far as British Ambassador in Mogadishu?
So thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I've had a tremendous privilege to be appointed as the British Ambassador here. I've been here 5 months, as you say. It's a great privilege because Britain and Somalia have a very special relationship that goes back over 100 years. We've got a very large Somali population who live in Britain, and today, we have a large number of British organisations who are here working with Somalis. And since I got here, I've had the chance to see some of the range of things that the UK does in Somalia, from helping in the health sector or education to training the police and the military. And one thing that's really struck me is that although Somalia continues to have a lot of problems, I'm also filled with certain optimism about the future. I think that we are, just a few months away, I hope, from big decisions about steps towards debt relief, which will really set the economy on a good trajectory. I think we are now starting to train members of the Somali National Army in large numbers, and the government is pursuing military operations, which I think are helping make the country safer. So I'm hoping my time here will be one of progress and success.
The military training that you just mentioned,
yes.
Did you start, or you are willing to start?
So we started training the Somali Army here in January 2017, but we're scaling it up. So at the moment, I was in Baidoa 2 weeks ago to launch the latest phase of our training, where we are training 100 Somali soldiers in things like how to build defensive positions and how to help secure the city of Baidoa. I hope we're going to be stepping that up again in September, and we've just started this month to build a barracks that will house 450 soldiers in Baidoa. I mean, at the same time, right across the country, we're also helping to train community police, and we're engaged in other parts of the security operations. So we're helping the Ministry of Defence, the Prime Minister's Office, the SNA headquarters to plan operations, and support them in other ways. For example, in ensuring that people who live in areas that have been liberated from Al-Shabaab should see the benefits of that immediately in terms of food support or help with housing or irrigation or whatever they need.
Thank you. What does UK believe in general politics in Somalia and Somaliland?
Between Somalia and Somaliland?
What do you believe in?
Well, look, so firstly, our position hasn't changed, and any discussions of the status of Somaliland, of the relationship between Hargeisa and Mogadishu, are of course for the authorities in Mogadishu and Hargeisa, and they would be primarily for countries in the region to recognise first. But our position is straightforward, which is that we think it would be good if there was dialogue between Hargeisa and Mogadishu, and it would be good if there were greater confidence. And so if there is a credible process that would help build confidence, we'd gladly support it. But the initiative has to lie in Mogadishu and Hargeisa above all.
Somaliland and Somalia talkies are on standstill. And the president of federal government of Somalia appointed a committee of 4 members to lead or to resume the talkies. But Somaliland leaders, they rejected. In your view, what could be the solution?
Well, as I said, I think any decisions about dialogue between Hargeisa and Mogadishu are for the authorities in those 2 places. So, I don't have a view on the composition of this committee or whether it's the right move. But what I would say is this, which is that if the authorities in Mogadishu and Hargeisa can agree on a process for dialogue or on confidence-building steps, then I am sure that the international community would want to welcome that and support that, and that includes the UK.
Thank you. You are in Somalia at least nearly 6 months. Could you please, in your view, what is your view in the security of the country in generally, in particular in Mogadishu? the security?
Well, of course, there are too many attacks, and Al-Shabaab is much stronger than we would like it. Just 2 weeks ago, we had the terrible attack in Kismayo. Only on Monday this week, another terrible bomb near K4 here in Mogadishu. What I would say, and that's frustrating for everybody, and my heart goes out to all those Somalis who've been touched by violence in some way. What I would say is this, that I think the international community and Somalia have a great determination to rid the country of this evil forever. I mentioned that Britain is training Somali National Army soldiers. So too is the European Union, so too is Turkey. The Americans are training special forces. We're all engaged in different ways in training the police. And so what we're seeing at the moment is genuine capability being built. Somali soldiers, in our experience, are good, they're high quality, they're brave, they are very, very determined. And I'm sure that with a bit of assistance, they will become very, very capable. And what we're seeing, for example, in Lower Shabelle at the moment is Somali soldiers really taking the initiative at taking the fight to Al-Shabaab, freeing populations that have been under Al-Shabaab control, and offering those people a better life. And if you talk to people from the area, they say their lives have improved no end.
Okay, we will go there. How does the security in Mogadishu seem to you?
Well, as I said, there are too many attacks in Mogadishu, and we all recognise that.
Are you saying that security in Mogadishu is not good?
Well, we would all prefer there to be no attacks in Mogadishu. You know, most days there are reports of somebody being killed or an incident with gunfire or something, and of course that's very sad. But what I think is that the government is making significant progress to improve it. I think it's harder than it's ever been for Al-Shabaab to get explosives into the city. And I think, the police are more disciplined, they are more capable, they are stronger. And although life is difficult at the moment, I think a lot of investment is going into the sector. And I think, over time, security is going to improve.
Thank you. The case of Somalia's water dispute with Kenya is still pending, waiting for international court of justice.
Yes.
The relation between Mogadishu and Nairobi deteriorating recent months. There are calls for international partners to intervene. Do you think UK has a role?
So the dispute is a bilateral one between Kenya and Somalia, and it's not really for the UK as a third country to intervene in that. And at the moment, as you say, it's in front of the International Court of Justice, and the next hearings on that are in September, and most people expect there to be a judgment sometime next year. So it wouldn't be right for me to comment on that. But what I would say is this, and it's something I've said both to Kenyans and to Somalis since I got here, which is that Kenya and Somalia are countries with a very close relationship. There are a lot of Kenyans who live in Somalia, a lot of Somalis who live in Kenya. The two countries depend on each other for trade, for security, for prosperity. Anything that can be done to improve the relationship between them, I think, would be very positive. And so, we have strongly encouraged whatever dialogue is possible, whatever political cooperation is possible, because I strongly believe that a good relationship between Kenya and Somalia, and indeed between Somalia and other countries of the region, is truly for the benefit both of Somali people and for the people elsewhere in East Africa.
So is UK trying to mediate them as to solve the problem?
So as I said, it's a bilateral dispute, and it would be very much for the Somali government and the Kenyans to take the initiative if they want to talk about it. But I believe that it's good for Kenya and Somalia to talk about the full range of issues that they have, whether it's trade, whether it's security, terrorism, Al-Shabaab you've just mentioned, the maritime dispute, and so on. I think that would be a good thing.
Thank you. Relations by the federal government of Somalia with its member states have been on the bat. The federal government of Somalia has been accused of interfering in internal elections in some states. You have visited and met with almost all leaders of the federal states. What was your impression What was your impression into such situation? Do you think Somalia's federalism is worth review?
So, as you say, I've been to many parts of Somalia, and what people say is the same. They want a strong Somali government to represent the country overseas and help deliver security, but they also want many decisions to be taken closer to them, decisions about their village or community to taken closer to them. So I think some version of cooperative federalism is surely the right model for Somalia. As you say, in recent months, sometimes there have been differences between the federal member state presidents and the federal government. What we think, is that actually the relationship ought to be win-win. If the federal government and the member states can agree, there is so much more that can be done for the sake of Somalia. Let me give you an example. I mentioned debt relief before. So Somalia has debts of $4.7 billion. The international community is seriously looking at cancelling those debts because of all the reforms that have gone on. But the final stages of that, require the member states and the federal government to work together on further reforms. The assistance that debt relief would bring is of direct material benefit to people in every single one of the member states. And therefore our hope, our encouragement is to the federal government and the member states to sit down together and agree ways of sharing revenue, sharing responsibilities, so that the whole of Somalia can benefit.
Thank you. UK supports Somali federal government and its member states. Current, what is the UK role in Jubilant election?
So obviously tensions are high at the moment over the Jubilant election, as they often are before elections. The arrangements for that are very much for the people of Jubilant and the Election Commission. But our strong belief is that stability and a unified state in Jubilant are essential for the well-being not only of people who live there, but the whole of Somalia and the wider region. And so we encourage the Jubilant authorities, the federal government and others to take every step that is needed to ensure that these elections deliver a stable, peaceful, non-violent result. Now, there have been a lot of concerns that people might interfere in this election, or that the process is somehow unfair. And what we've urged is, firstly, that no one should interfere in this election, and secondly, that the process should be one that is acceptable to all. The Jubilant Election Commission knows what that would involve. It means a process that's open to all the candidates who are legitimate. It means one that is transparent and fair. It means one where the election takes place by secret ballot in a neutral venue with security for all. So the Election Commission knows what it needs to do, and I think the onus is very much on them now to deliver a successful and peaceful election.
But do you think that they will hold or conduct free and fair election?
Well, that's the hope and the expectation of everybody. It's the expectation of the international community, but more than that, it's the expectation of the people of Jubilant. And really, it's for the authorities now to take the steps that they need to take to ensure that we have a stable, peaceful, free and fair election.
But one thing, in Jubilant election, there are crises, big political spite in there. The requirement is released by the Electoral Commission in Jubilant have been refused and pointed as unfair by the candidates and clan elders in there. Ahmed Madowe, the outgoing president, wanted to hold the disputed election. As ambassador or as UK, will you recognize if the outgoing president or leader back to the president, Ahmed? Will you recognize him?
So the UK doesn't have any view on who should be president of Jubilant. That's a matter entirely for the people of Jubilant. Our preoccupation, as I've said, is that these elections should be free and fair, and that they should deliver a stable and unified Jubilant state, and for the Jubilant authorities to take the steps that they know they need to take in order that the process should be acceptable to everybody. It should be transparent, and it should be as free and credible as it possibly can be. And you said that some people are disputing the process. Well, our view is that the more free and fair the process will be, the more inclusive it will be, and the more that people will accept that.
So why do you want to intervene while the candidates and clan elders are calling you to intervene this election?
Well, Somalia is a sovereign country, and decisions about Somali politics are absolutely ones for Somalis to take. In 2012 and 2017, we hosted in London important conferences that took big decisions about the future of Somalia, but they were decisions taken by Somalis. We were merely the hosts. And, you know, decisions about who should get elected in Somalia, what the system should be of politics here, those are absolutely decisions for Somalis and not for the international community. We will support, we will encourage, and we will offer whatever inspiration we can to help Somalis, but in the end those are decisions that only Somalis can or should take.
But how about if he won illegitimately?
As I have said, you know, we will. We want to support a good process. I don't think, you know, we should talk about any kind of hypothetical outcomes, you know, at this point. At the moment, the focus of everybody should be on trying to make sure that these elections are absolutely as good as they can be.
Thank you. Let us move to look into the press freedom of Somalia. UK, together with Canada, recently hosted a global conference on press freedom in London. Somali government representatives attended that conference, but journalists in Somalia are continuously facing threats, harassment, and imprisonment across the country. How do you see these violations?
So you're right, we've just hosted a conference in London on media freedom. That we think media freedom is really important because a free and effective media can be one of the best ways, not only for people to be informed about politics in their country, but also it's a great check against corruption, it's a great check against abuse of power. So across the world, we think it's good to encourage media freedom. Here in Somalia, journalists have a very hard time often. We saw that only 2 weeks ago in the explosion in Kismayo, which sadly killed Hodan Nalaya and Mohamed Sahal Omar, two sort of brilliant and inspiring journalists. What we're trying to do is firstly to call on countries to help ensure a free media, and then to take some practical steps that we think can help support that. So we have launched a journalism prize to encourage young, talented Somali journalists to pick up their cameras or their pens and report good stories about the country. We're supporting some media training, and as you said, you know, we have encouraged the Somali government, and we had representatives of the Federation of Somali Journalists and the National Union of Somali Journalists in London at this media conference, where they were able to meet people from across the world who are campaigning on these issues. And it's going to be a long struggle, but we think it's a really important fight to ensure that the media in Somalia is as strong and as healthy as it can be.
Thank you. Journalists are reportedly arrested, tortured in Somaliland, and lack of freedom of speech reported. When you arrived in Somaliland, did you discuss its leaders over the press freedom?
So, unfortunately, there are, in all sorts of areas across Somalia and Somaliland, there are problems that are faced by politicians, ordinary citizens, activists, and so on. I always will try to raise those when I meet local leaders and politicians. I think some of the events that have taken place in Somaliland are well known, and I have raised those with the authorities there. In my experience, Somalilanders, like people in other parts of Somalia, want to live in an open, liberal, tolerant society, and sometimes the authorities don't always live up to that. Certainly we strongly encourage the authorities to do that, and we try to work with them, support the development of justice institutions and the police and so on, in order that they should support human rights.
Okay, how does the current government led by President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo seems to?
It's a reforming government. It's a government that wants to work with the international community. It's a government that I think is making a number of transformative changes. I mentioned the steps in financial reform, on economic reform, which could lead to debt relief at some point next year. I think it's having a transformative effect on the security sector. We've seen reforms that many people didn't think were possible. And so, of course, I know there are many people across Somalia who are frustrated, who would like things to go further or faster. But this is a government that I think has made significant progress over its time, and we look forward to more.
Thank you. Violations against human rights, including state security soldiers shooting and killing civilians, have been widely reported in Somalia, and UK recently opened a new training for Somali security forces in Baidoa.
Yeah.
Do you think you can have a role in taking your responsibility to stop this?
I hope so. So look, it's a sad truth that we do get reports of violations of one kind or another from the security forces across the country. We hear stories sometimes of checkpoints or worse. We strongly believe that we should be supporting armed forces and police that are clean and decent and not corrupt and are honest, and that we should not be supporting police or armed forces that are committing violations or are stealing people's money or oppressing people in some way. And that's what we try to do through our training. So to give you some examples, we have trained Somali trainers along with AMISOM who deliver human rights training to members of the security forces. We want to make sure that over time every member of the Somali security forces has had good human rights training. In our programs in Baidoa, it's an essential element of that. And where sometimes it falls down, as it did in Southwest State, we stopped that program until reforms had been put in place that addressed those challenges in the police. And I'm pleased to say that those reforms are on track. So very much in terms of how we intervene here, we are very determined to support human rights, and I believe that our programs do that in a very positive way.
You started the training in Baidoa. Why did you select it to make it first? Why don't you go to Hirshabelle, Galmudug?
We can't go everywhere. We don't have the resources to go everywhere. One of the things that we thought and felt is that quite a lot of international partners are active in Mogadishu, and that it's right to be doing some training outside Mogadishu. So that's why we're in Baidoa. But I should hasten to say that we support police programs, for example, that are truly nationwide. The Joint Police Programme, which is our collaboration with the EU and Germany, supports the police not just in Southwest State, but also, for example, in Jubaland or in Hirshabelle.
UK government supported Somalia in many parties, security, including security and humanitarian. So,
yeah.
Do you investigate where your support goes directly?
Yes, of course.
For example, IDP people living across Mogadishu.
Yes.
It's outskirts.
Yes.
So, do you investigate where your support goes directly?
Yes. We absolutely know where all of our support goes. We have very comprehensive programs of monitoring of our support because, frankly, British taxpayers expect all their support to go directly to those who are in need and not to be siphoned off anywhere or diverted. And we are as sure as we can be that every penny of British support is well used here in Somalia.
You stay in Mogadishu?
Yes.
You mentioned it that you hear attacks in Mogadishu.
Yes.
To you as ambassador, British ambassador.
Yes.
What comes to your mind whenever you hear Al-Shabaab?
Look, I think Al-Shabaab, it's very unfortunate that they exist. I think these are people with a very warped and twisted idea about what kind of country Somalia ought to be. I meet Somalis who are full of promise and talent and education. They want their society to be one where everyone is free to be the best they can be. They don't want to be in a straitjacket of some perverse interpretation of Islam. They don't want to be living in fear. They don't want to be the victims of a commercial racket. And Al-Shabaab is doing exactly the opposite.
So what comes to your mind? You feel what whenever you hear Al-Shabaab?
Well, I feel determination that we should do whatever we can to work with the Somali authorities to get rid of this problem. And I think it's going to be a very complicated challenge. It's already been many years, and it's going to need a wide variety of interventions to do it. It's not just a military problem. We also need to resolve the local disputes, develop the economy, provide jobs. In other words, to remove all the things that Al-Shabaab exploits, and that's going to be a long-term business. But I think we are seeing success, and I'm sure that over the next few years we will see sort of more success.
Thank you. Your previous embassy in Mogadishu is destroyed by the civil war in Somalia. Now it based here.
Yes.
Is UK planning to rebuild its former embassy in the capital?
So we were only renting the land that we had for our previous embassy, and so we don't have that land anymore. Thanks to the city, we are very lucky to have our current site. We've now got quite a large diplomatic team here. I'm pleased that we were the first Western embassy to re-establish ourselves here in 2013, and I'm kind of looking forward to further developing the embassy here in the next few years.
AMISOM forces is leaving soon or later. What is your plan to help Somali National Army, SNA?
So I would say AMISOM is reshaping more than anything else. The most important change that's happening here in the last few years has been the coming on stream of larger numbers of trained Somali army soldiers, and that means that AMISOM soldiers can be freed up from certain tasks and can do other things. So I would say in the short term, what you're seeing is not AMISOM disappear, but you're seeing a change in some of the things that it does, and a transition as it is slowly handing over certain responsibilities to the Somali army. Somalia is a sovereign country, and it should have responsibility for its own security sector. So as soon as the capability exists in the Somali National Army, it's absolutely right that it should take on as much responsibility as it can.
UK elected a new Prime Minister. Can we expect Boris Johnson to follow the footsteps of Theresa May and David Cameron in order to ensure UK's leadership in Somalia?
Look, I started by saying that the UK and Somalia had a very long-standing relationship, and that's absolutely true. And I'm absolutely sure that whatever happens in British politics, that will remain the case. There's been, over the last few years, we've had several prime ministers, and they've all been very determined to take forward our relationship with Somalia. So I'm very sure whatever happens on that, and whatever happens in our relationship with the European Union, Britain will remain a steadfast friend and ally of Somalia.
How do you see the Prime Minister of Somalia, Hassan Ali Khairi, is in do some rep to solve the political spot in Galmudug? How do you see it?
Look, one thing I've learned since I became ambassador is how complicated Somali politics is, and Galmudug is maybe the most complicated area. But what I would say is this. A month, 6 weeks ago, we had a divided administration in Galmudug, and it looked as if we had a significant disagreement about the elections there. I think now there is a reconciliation process, and it looks as if there is at least a chance that we will have a unified administration and an agreement on an election process. And I think the role of the international community is very much to support that, see what can be done to deliver reconciliation, and then to ensure that there is an inclusive political settlement for Galmudug. It's a really important part of Somalia, and it's one that suffered far too long from divisions, and I hope that this process will lead in time to an inclusive settlement.
So what's your message towards to the Somali's Prime Minister Hassan Al Khaire while he is in there to solve that problem?
My message is good luck.
Thank you for talking Universal.